Hello, I'm Samuel Trew, and today I'll be talking to you about my master's project on enhancing robust aggregation in federated learning. My supervisor was Dr. Amir Al-Ansari, with my second marker being Dr. Jonathan Passerat-Palmbach.
Now, federated learning is a method of machine learning such that all the different clients, if they have a lot of data, but they don't want to share any of it, for example, it might be private medical data, they want to share it among other clients, what they can do is have a central trusted server. They can train a model, train all the same models on their local data, and then send the model's parameters to the central server. Now, then the central server aggregates all of these model parameters together to form a sort of more global, more mean model, before then sending that model out back to the clients again so they can do some further training. This happens over multiple different federated rounds, such that you ultimately get a global model which has used all the client's data, but no data has been shared. Now, this is susceptible to attacks, as seen here, where a bad client sends a malicious update and ends up poisoning the global model, which then, when the end of the federated round happens, aggregation takes place, and it gets sent back out to all the benign clients. The benign clients' models then get poisoned as well, being made worse than if the bad client wasn't there at all. This is why robust aggregation is needed.
Now, robust aggregation is the form of aggregating against these malicious clients or faulty or bad clients in such a way that the global model stays benign, and so that the benign clients ultimately don't get impacted from these bad clients. This can be done through things like blocking or assigning different weights to all the different clients, or even just sometimes not including certain clients in the aggregation process. In this project, I cover over a variety of current robust aggregation methods. I have a look at new attacks that aren't quite as are better at attacking compared to these robust aggregators and can somewhat break them, as well as propose my own method using a clustering-based solution to help better aggregate against all forms of different attacks under different scenarios. However, I'll mainly be focusing on label flipping attacks and free riding attacks. There are a few current solutions available in terms of robust aggregation. So, things like mcrum, which uses subsets of data, COMED, which takes the median of all the different clients, and that works quite well for when there's fewer than a half of the malicious clients are faulty, for obvious median purposes. Adaptive federated averaging, otherwise known as AFA, which ends up sort of assigning weights based on a metric called cosine similarity to determine how similar the different clients are together. As well as then finally Federated which uses machine learning to help assign the weights to all the different clients and hopefully identify which was good and what's bad.
For those machine learning enthusiasts out there, you'll be glad to know that FedMJ which basically just slaps machine learning on the problem and hopes to solve it, but ultimately doesn't really understand the problem and doesn't provide a machine learning solution which adequately is able to solve it. This leaves us with the current state of federated learning robust aggregation, where they all perform similar into around going 11 malicious clients out of a total of 30 clients. But it should be known that FedMJ Plus and AFA, they both block, which means they kind of add an extra level of complexity to deciding what should be blocked, what shouldn't, which can cause issues in its own. So it's impressive to see them perform just as well as COMED and mcrum.
Now, robust aggregators can handle generally things like more malicious attacks like sign flipping quite well, because they end up being anomalies, and most robust aggregators perform anomaly detection. What's more interesting is a form of attack called free riding. This is where the clients essentially don't have any data to contribute, but they want to trick as if they do. This is because they want to get a global model from all the other clients' data at the end of it for free, essentially for maybe forms of data theft or for intellectual property theft for monetary reasons, And this is quite interesting simply because robust aggregators do anomalies. Free riders want to blend in as much as humanly possible so they don't get detected, or so that they don't damage the model, don't hurt it. They want to be as benign as possible. So this leaves us a very interesting predicament with how free riders and robust aggregators currently act together. You even get kind of amusing interactions, such as when robust aggregators like COMED end up essentially, as you pass a threshold of 14 to 15 to 16 free riders, end up just completely failing greatly when this happens, because ultimately then the most median parameters are free riding parameters, or at least for the most part, so they can't learn. This is even more funny when you look at something FedMJ Plus, which is meant to be generally a bit of a better blocker, because it actually blocks clients as well, as opposed to just robustly aggregating. And this one doesn't just fail to robustly aggregate, it also blocks just the benign clients. None of the free ones, just the benign ones. This is, to me, is quite entertaining to see that the best robust aggregators that we currently are looking at just can't handle this very simple form of attack. And it kind of leads me to believe that maybe the way that robust aggregators are framed, are used today, actually don't encapsulate the federated learning space well enough. They're just basic anomaly detection methods. This is where clustering comes in. My proposed solution, that I named Fed Paddock, stands for Personalised and Adaptive Dimension Reducing Clustering. And I'll get onto each of these points in a moment, but essentially the goal is to try and group similar clusters together based on either their, based on their model parameters, and then group them together and aggregate separately, or aggregate them together, or robustly aggregate on each of these clusters, and use this clustering, use their similarities between the benign ones and the differences between the malicious or free riding ones, and use that to my advantage to robustly aggregate. A simple model can have around 500,000 different parameters inside this neural network model. And so when you're trying to cluster based on all these different parameters, you can probably easily tell there's been a lot of noise there. A lot of these parameters are just going to kind of be little bits and pieces here and there that aren't very important. There's probably going to be just a smaller handful which are going to be far more important determining how the difference of the clients should be clustered together. This is where PCA comes in, otherwise known as Principal Component Analysis. It's a method of reducing the dimensions of the clusters such that the most principal components, the most principal parts of the model are kept. This can be done into things like one-dimensional, two-dimensional, 3, 4, and so on, number of dimensions of PCA to represent the model in its most number of dimensions, like n number of dimensions, principal components. Now, we've already seen great improvements from typical robust aggregators to our one using clustering, where we're able to see going from around 11, 12 malicious clients to wonderful whopping 22 malicious clients. Using PCA, however, we can end up going up to about 26 malicious clients. This is borderline going to a theoretical maximum, where we have 30 clients overall, 26 of which are malicious, and only 4 benign. Using our clustering, where we have 5 clusters, you can see how this can end up kind of pushing the limits of actually how far we can even robustly aggregate against. So this is fantastic news. However, we do tend to notice that actually at lower dimensions of PCA, looking at 1, 2, 3D PCA, that the malicious models end up impacting the benign models more so. So actually the 26 malicious clients I was talking about was with 4D PCA. Now, the reason why it works at 4D and not as much at 1, 2 or 3D is due to the fact that the malicious clients, they're ultimately in the federated learning part where the global model gets sent out, they get given a bit more of a benign model. Robust aggregation takes place and they get given a perfectly benign model. This lowers their damage, this makes them look more and more benign as time goes on, even though they're still trying to do malicious attacks. This causes the PCA representation to slowly kind of drift across and ultimately be more likely to be either spread out into their own separate clusters, forming too many clusters to handle, or impact the benign clusters in such a way that they kind of infiltrate into benign ones and look so similar that we can't robustly aggregate against them anymore. This is where personalization comes in. The idea behind this is that we want to give certain groups of clients different models from each other so it can better suit their needs. Now, there are other methods of personalization which really focus on some score metric that they use locally. However, what we mainly focus about is trying to give clients that are similar to each other the same model. So we can give malicious clients their own model, we can give benign clients their own model, we can give free riders their own model. This then allows them to not end up overlapping to each other and either get the malicious clients or the free riding clients to get any good model, which is an ultimate goal which would be perfect.
Now, I was able to come up with about 4 different ways or 4 different methods of personalization. The first is called selective, where you basically just choose the best clusters to aggregate together, and then only those best ones get updated. General is about the same, except there's a more model where all the aggregators get updated. all the clusters aggregate together, and the non-best clusters get sent this more general model. Thresholding, where essentially you just kind of give zero weighting to certain clients based on some standard deviation away from the mean of some scoring metrics. And the no global method, where you don't actually have a global model. Instead, you just have your individual clusters, and they just aggregate amongst themselves, and there's no sharing amongst the clusters themselves.
When we compare these methods, we very quickly see that the general method does not work. Only handles maybe about 15 malicious clients, and not really even handles them, to be honest. It performs quite badly, and that's even with 4D PCA. The selective and the no global method, however, are fantastic. Even when using 1D PCA, which is arguably harder to cluster and work with, it still can handle up to 26 malicious clients perfectly with 1D PCA. Now you're thinking, well, we already had 26 malicious clients, and we did, and that was only with 4D PCA. So this is arguably an improvement with the less capable 1D PCA, which is fantastic, and hopefully make that algorithm more robust and more rigid and strong in its ability to aggregate into different scenarios. Not only that, but even more wonderfully, it can handle a mixture of malicious, benign, and free-riding clients. So this is wonderful because simply the goal of this was to help more robustly aggregate not just against malicious but also free-riding clients. And the perfect part with both the selective and no global method is that the free riders don't get a single model. They get a single useful good model. There is no other strategy right now that can do this. The closest that come to this are just simply ones that can help you identify what free riders are visually, not even programmatically. This is fantastic to see. And it's going to handle, again, going to a theoretical maximum of about 26 malicious clients out of a total of 30 overall. Ultimately, in this project, I was able to help prove that both clustering and personalization, along with using things like PCA, can help more robustly aggregate against these different types of attacks, and hopefully can prove to be a more optimal solution in the future with a better understanding of the federated space. Thank you.